Hi, my name is Veronica Ellington. Um, I'm an addict, and I first started using drugs when I was 13 years old. I didn't understand at the time, but I didn't know that it was wrong. And the first time I got busted, I was in 8th and ninth grade. Both my 8th and ninth grade year, I got busted from the police for bringing drugs to school, bringing marijuana. Um, I was forced to go to an alternative school, and that's where all the trouble kids um, were that made trouble at school. And um, I was up against the wall of my addiction. Um, so all the drugs and everything just was in my face because I was at that school, and that's what they did at that school. I wrote a few notes just to keep me on track. Um, I went to the detention center and stayed on probation, and that was my downfall. I kept getting into trouble, like with dirty urines and things like that. Um, and as a juvenile, I couldn't stay clean. I stayed at the juvenile detention center a whole lot. Um, I just was kept running away, and kept doing, bad things that I shouldn't have been doing, sneaking out and stuff like that. I eventually went to a group home. I had been to boot camp, juvenile prison, all that. Um, I did any and everything to get weed, and I finally, my ninth grade year, I dropped out of school. Um, Finally, I was in juvenile, and I turned 18. They took me from juvenile and put me in jail with juvenile charges, and I don't know why that happened. Um, when I got out, I was confused because it was juvenile charges, but I had ended up in the big jail where the adults were. I even was a cheerleader, and the coaches would give me weed to smoke, um, or marijuana, and if I had weed, I was okay. And my children and my childhood friends did marijuana when I was out from jail. I ran away a lot and stayed with friends most of the time. Um, I was always on the run because I couldn't stay clean, and they wanted me to do classes and stuff. I finally got a drug program called Dual Track, and Dual Track hindered me a whole lot because they give me dirty urine. I get dirty urine I couldn't stay clean. I was on probation and I was on Dual Track, and I could not stay clean because I had a weed addiction. Um, they wanted drug tests on a regular, so I couldn't stay clean. So that means back to jail. That program, if you got a dirty urine, you means you had to go back to jail. And just telling you a little bit about my childhood, I wrote some notes so I wouldn't forget the things I need to say. Not to say like it's a game or this is some kind of proposition to get prescribers or whatever. I just want to make sure that I can share my story to um, people that are struggling with drug addiction. This is just the beginning of how it all started. Um, um, so my whole juvenile life, I was locked up, and when I turned 18, I had a juvenile charge, but they put me in the big house with you know 18 and above prisoners or inmates, as you want to call it. Um, I know I say a lot, but this is my first time doing this video, and it's hard because I've never really expressed uh, my struggles. But it was hard for me. I had to go to boot camp because I was in prison. I was in a juvenile prison at Bon Air, and they said we're going to offer you a boot camp, and if you want to take it, you can get out of prison and you can just stay there for 6 months. I took that. I said, yeah, I'm going to go to boot camp, but it was so hard. I mean, as soon as you got out of the van, they was yelling at you, talking about push up, you know, sit up, do all this. I mean, it's just like on TV. They yell at you and they fill up the water with fill up the sand pit with water. So you have to work out in it if you're disciplined. If you to discipline you, it was just really hard. I came out of there looking cock diesel, and nobody messed with me, you know. But I just want to let people know that there's more to my story. This is just the beginning. But nobody wants to live their whole juvenile life in jail and in prisons and group homes and boot camps and stuff. It was very hard for me to get, you know, uh, acquainted with all that was going on with me. My parents, they raised me really good, but I just got caught in the weed addiction, and I did everything for cigarettes and weed, and I just want people to know that it's hard. I know there's probably juveniles going through the same thing I went through when it came to um, when it came to um, addiction. It all starts with weed. You know, most people they smoke cigarettes and they start smoking weed. Not all people that smoke cigarettes do weed, but it's just that when it's thrown in your face all the time, you can't help but do it. You know, because when I got busted at school, I didn't really know about it because the person that gave me some weed the first time was parsley. I found out it was parsley. I didn't even smoke weed, but I made it a point just like, well, I want to smoke some weed. You know, even if it's parsley and I don't feel nothing, I want to smoke some weed, and so that's what I did. And I don't wish that on nobody because I'll talk about it in some later videos. But what I had just told y'all about what happened with me about weed and getting caught at school, you know, it really hindered me because I stayed on probation and I could never get off because I kept getting dirty urines about smoking weed. So I spent most of my juvenile life locked up. Stay tuned for the next level of Addiction to the Core.